Welcome to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast with your host, legendary powerlifter and strength athlete, Chad Ikes. For most, the journey of strength starts in the gym, but should inevitably expand through all aspects of life. Join us as we discuss all things strength. Now, here's your host, Chad Ikes.
Welcome back to another episode of The Quotes. I don't really know how to start these podcasts yet. I'm still working on that because I actually was introduced in the intro. But here we are. That aside, on another episode of The Quotes. Today I have one by R.D. Laing. And it's a pretty interesting one. This one goes down many paths in my brain. So here it is. We have to realize that we are as deeply afraid to live and to love as we are to die. We have to realize that we are as deeply afraid to love and to live as we are to die. My first thought, of course, is, well, I'm not that way. And then, of course, I have to step back and contemplate this a little bit. I do think that I don't have a lot of issues with this. Then again, maybe I do. Death has never really been a big fear of mine. I have more fear of getting drastically, life-changingly hurt than I do of dying. But I know that there have been times in my life, I would say more with love than anything, that I probably was afraid to love because I didn't feel like being hurt. And I've been hurt, and it sucks. And I don't know that I'm afraid to live. I mean, I actually think I'm more than willing to live, and I think my past shows that I'm willing to just throw all my cards on the table and go for it. But what really is living? What really is living? I think dying is pretty self-explanatory. Your heart stops beating. What I do think about when I read this quote, though, I've known people that I believe are afraid to live. And by live, I mean really go for it. Really feel it. I think there's a lot of people that live in what I call melancholy. Like they're just kind of going through the motions, just waiting. Like for them, winning the game is playing the longest, I guess. You know, people that just get their 40-hour job, do their stuff, do their job, go home. They never really do anything exciting. They never really take any chances. And they're always playing it safe. So is that really living? For me, that's not really living. Not that you got to be crazy all the time and you got to put your cards on the table all the time, but I think that if you don't do that, you never really find out who you are. And if you never really find out who you are you really living? And I've known people who could be great at something, anything. But they always seem to find a way to not push that limit. And I think that's sometimes due to the fact that once you do something great, people are going to expect great things out of you. And that's a whole nother way of living. And I think there's a lot of people that want the bar, they want a low bar in their life. But having a low bar in your life, as I said, is not living to me. Now, love love's an interesting one too, because what is love? I've had multiple times in my life where I define that differently. I've had multiple relationships where I defined it differently. I've had times where I convinced myself that love is a choice, not so much a feeling. And I've had times where I'm kind of let that whole romantic fairy tale part of me go. And I feel love way deeper. Like if I try to convince myself it's logic and a choice, it's not very intense. When I let it go and I wait for that person that brings those huge emotions out of me, it's way better. It's way more fun. But that leaves me susceptible to way more pain. And I've been crushed more than a few times. So I think this leaves a person with, what do you choose? Do you want to live on the far ends of the spectrum? Say a grayscale spectrum where happiness and sadness. I don't know what you'd really define the ends as, but like if you can be really happy, whatever you consider the opposite of that is the far end. If you can be really content, what's the other end of that? And living on those, I'm a guy who lives in the far ends because everything's way more intense. And if you always live in the middle, nothing's ever that intense. And I don't think you can have one end being way more intense if you haven't had the other end just as intense. You know, how can you know what real happiness feels like if you've just never been on the complete bottom? How can you really enjoy being filthy rich if you've never been filthy poor? And pretty much any emotions you want to take. I mean, if you've never truly had your heart ripped out, you're never going to experience what true, deep, crazy romantic love feels like. And because I take everything to the strength realm, you know, there's hitting a PR, which is a great feeling. And then there's hitting a world record and doing a lift that no one's ever done. And even if you break that down further, there's kind of paying attention to your training and working hard and then hitting that PR. And then there is that I gave everything and I sacrificed a ton. And now I hit that PR. Like what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And I guarantee if it was easy for you to hit that PR, you're going to be excited. If you gave everything and you set that goal and you pushed and you pushed and you pushed, it's a whole different ballgame. So we have to realize that we are as deeply afraid to live and love as we are to die. So I think the concept here is if we don't realize how deeply afraid of these things we are, it's easy to just ignore that and just never go for it. And in order to overcome this fear, we have to recognize it. We have to understand that there is a fear of doing this. And that's what's holding us back from doing it. Like if you can't even realize that you're afraid of it, how are you ever going to go for it? How are you ever going to do it? How are you ever going to know that you need to push harder and go harder? If you admit that if you're afraid, if you admit that there's fear, now you know what you got to do. Now you know that fear is there and it's holding you back, and you need to break through that and push through it and go further. So many people in this world are so afraid of so many things, but they won't ever admit it. So they can never get better. They can never get past it. They're drowning themselves. It's their own hands pushing them down into water, and they don't even realize it. And for me, that's what this quote is. I think that's what he's saying. That's what it means to me. What does it mean to you guys? So I'm saying, fight that fear. Live your life. Love. Do everything you can do. Feel everything you can feel. And don't fear death. It's going to come, but don't fear it. And I think the more you live, the less you will fear it. Until next time, this is Courage Barbell Unlimited, the Quotes Edition. And I am out of here.
Thanks for listening to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast. For more information, please visit CourageBarbell.com. Until next time.